The cold metal floor bit into Zarathus's knees as she knelt before the High Council of the Velthari Empire. Above her, 12 ancient beings sat on thrones made of crystallized starlight, their pale blue skin glowing with the power that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Their eyes held no warmth, no mercy, only the cold judgment of a species that believed itself perfect. "You have spoken words of heresy," declared High Counselor Vexitharan, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. "You have suggested that lesser species deserve our respect. You have claimed that the inferior races of the galaxy might teach us something of value." Zarathus kept her head down, but her heart burned with the same conviction that had brought her to this moment. 3 months ago she had stood in this very chamber and spoken the truth that had lived in her heart since childhood. She had told the council that their empire's policy of enslaving or destroying other species was wrong. She had dared to suggest that peaceful contact might bring knowledge and growth to their people. The other Velthari in the chamber whispered among themselves, their voices like wind through dead leaves. Some looked at her with disgust, others with fear. To question the Empire's way was to question everything they had built their lives upon. "The accused will rise," commanded another counselor. Zarathus stood slowly, her legs shaking not from fear but from the weight of what was about to happen. She had known this moment would come when she first spoke her mind. The Velthari had only one punishment for those who challenged their core beliefs. Zarathus of the Velthari Empire, High Counselor Vextharan announced, "You are hereby cast out from our people. Your name shall be erased from all records. Your family line shall deny your existence. You shall be given a vessel barely fit for space travel and sent into the void never to return." The words hit her like physical blows. She had prepared for this, but the reality was more brutal than she had imagined. Everyone she had ever known would be forbidden to speak her name. Her parents, her siblings, her childhood friends, they would all act as if she had never existed. Furthermore, the High Counselor continued, "You shall carry a beacon that will warn all Velthari ships to avoid you. You are dead to us, exile. May the cold of space teach you the value of our warm embrace." Guards moved forward to escort her away. As they led her through the corridors she had walked since childhood, Zarathus saw other Velthari turn their backs to her. Some she had known for centuries. Others had been her closest friends. Now they looked through her as if she were invisible. The exile ship waited in the lowest docking bay, far from the gleaming vessels of the Imperial fleet. It was an old cargo hauler, barely 30 meters long, with engines that wheezed and systems that flickered. The guards loaded it with basic supplies, enough food and water for perhaps 6 months, basic tools and emergency medical supplies. "This is your new home, exile," one guard said as he sealed the airlock behind her. "Try not to die too quickly. The Empire wants you to have time to regret your foolishness." Zarathus stood alone in the tiny ship as it was pushed out of the docking bay by mechanical arms. Through the small porthole she watched her homeworld grow smaller. The beautiful crystal spires of the capital city sparkled in the light of their twin suns. Flying vehicles moved between the towers like schools of fish. It had been her whole world, and now she would never see it again. The ship's engines coughed to life, sending vibrations through the hull. The autopilot had been programmed with a random course that would take her far from Velthari space. She had no control over her destination. She was truly alone now, drifting in the vast emptiness between stars. Days passed into weeks. Zarathus tried to keep busy by checking the ship's systems and reading the technical manuals she found in storage. The ship was falling apart slowly but steadily. The air recycler made strange noises. The food processor kept breaking down. The heating system worked only half the time. She began to wonder if the Velthari had planned it this way. Perhaps they wanted her to die slowly in space rather than face a quick execution. It would be fitting punishment in their minds. Death by the very isolation they believed she deserved. 2 months into her exile, the ship's long-range sensors picked up something unexpected. There was a star system ahead with several planets, and one of them was sending out radio signals. Zarathus had studied alien civilizations as part of her research into peaceful contact. She knew that radio signals meant intelligent life. The planet was small and blue, covered mostly with water. The signals coming from it were complex but chaotic, suggesting a young civilization that had not yet learned to organize their communications efficiently. By Velthari standards, they would be considered barely intelligent animals. But Zarathus was no longer bound by Velthari standards. She was free to make her own choices, even if those choices were limited by her failing ship. The main engine gave a final wheeze and died just as she entered the outer edge of the system. Emergency power kept life support running, but she was now drifting helplessly toward the inner planets. Her options were simple: try to reach the inhabited planet or die in space. She activated the ship's emergency beacon and aimed it toward the blue world. The message was basic, a distress signal that any spacefaring civilization should recognize. She had no idea if the beings on that planet would understand it, or if they would care about a single alien ship in trouble. The reply came faster than she had expected. The signal was crude by Velthari standards, but it was clearly a response to her distress call. Someone down there had heard her and was trying to communicate. As her ship limped toward the blue planet, Zarathis felt something she had not experienced in months: hope. Perhaps the Velthari were wrong about lesser species. Perhaps there was kindness to be found among the stars, even if it came from beings her former people would consider inferior. The planet grew larger in her viewport, and she prepared to meet whatever beings called this world home. Captain Jake Miller stared at the readings on his screen and rubbed his tired eyes. He had been on duty for 16 hours straight, monitoring Earth's outer sensor network for any signs of trouble. The job was usually boring: tracking space debris, monitoring solar flares, watching for asteroids that might threaten Earth. But today was different. "Captain, are you seeing this?" called Lisa Park from the engineering station. Her voice carried excitement and worry in equal measure. "That signal we picked up 3 hours ago, it's definitely not natural." Jake moved to look over her shoulder at the data streaming across her monitor. The patterns were too regular, too organized to be random cosmic noise. Someone or something was sending a distress signal from the edge of their solar system. "Any idea what kind of ship it might be?" Jake asked. "Nothing like anything we've built," Lisa replied. "The technology looks advanced, but the power readings are dropping fast. Whatever it is, it's in serious trouble." Dr. Kate Sullivan looked up from her science station. "Captain, I've been analyzing the signal pattern. It's definitely a distress call, and there are biological readings suggesting a single life form aboard. They're asking for help." Jake felt his heart racing. First contact with an alien species was something humanity had dreamed about for centuries, but finding that first contact in the form of a dying being in a damaged ship was not how anyone had imagined it would happen. "Tony, how fast can we get the New Horizon ready for launch?" Jake called to his friend at the communications station. Tony Garcia grinned. "Give me 2 hours and we'll be ready to go. Amy's already running pre-flight checks on the rescue equipment." Jake nodded to Amy Chen, who was working frantically at her station. The New Horizon was Earth's most advanced rescue ship, designed to help humans in trouble in space. Today it might save an alien life instead. 2 hours later, the New Horizon was racing through space toward the distress signal. The ship's crew of 6 worked together like a well-trained team. Jake had served with most of them for years, and he trusted each of them completely. "Visual contact," announced Amy from her position at the sensors, putting it on the main screen. The alien ship appeared before them, and the crew fell silent. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, sleek and elegant but clearly damaged. Scorch marks covered its hull, and several sections looked like they had been deliberately sabotaged. "That's not battle damage," Lisa observed. "Someone stripped out parts of that ship on purpose. The engines, the navigation system, even some of the life support equipment. It's like they wanted whoever is inside to die slowly." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. What kind of people would do that to someone? "Tony, try to establish communication. Let them know we're here to help." Tony worked his controls, sending a simple mathematical sequence followed by basic symbols for friendship and assistance. The response came quickly, a voice speaking in a language they couldn't understand, but the tone was desperate and grateful. "Kate, what can you tell me about the life form inside?" Jake asked. Kate studied her readings carefully. "Humanoid, but taller than us. The body chemistry is different, but not incompatible with our atmosphere. I think we can safely bring them aboard, but they'll need medical attention soon." "Lisa, can we dock with their ship?" "Their docking system is too different from ours, but I can bring them close enough to use the emergency airlocks. Just give me a few minutes." Jake watched as Lisa skillfully maneuvered the New Horizon next to the alien vessel. The precision required was incredible. One wrong move could damage both ships. But Lisa had never failed to pull off a difficult rescue. and today was no exception. Airlock is sealed and pressurized, Amy reported. Whoever's in there is about to get their first look at humans. Jake, Kate, and Tony moved to the airlock, wearing their emergency suits just in case. When the inner door opened, they saw their first alien being. She was tall and graceful, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow faintly in the ship's lights. Her features were similar to human faces but more angular, and her large eyes held intelligence and fear in equal measure. She was clearly injured. One arm hung at an odd angle and there were cuts on her face and hands. "Easy," Jake said softly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "We're here to help." The alien spoke again in her musical language and tears ran down her face. Even without understanding her words, the crew could hear the gratitude in her voice. Kate moved forward slowly with her medical scanner. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the device. The alien nodded and held still while Kate ran the scanner over her body. "Broken arm, several cuts, and she's dehydrated," Kate reported. "Nothing we can't fix." "But Jake, look at this." She showed him the scanner readings. "These injuries aren't from an accident. Someone beat her before putting her in that ship." Jake felt sick. Whatever had happened to this being, it was deliberate cruelty. He looked into the alien's large eyes and saw intelligence, kindness, and pain. She didn't look like a criminal or a threat. She looked like someone who had been hurt by people who should have protected her. "Let's get her to the medical bay," Jake said. "We can figure out the rest later." As they helped the alien walk through the ship's corridors, Jake noticed how she looked at everything with wonder and curiosity. She seemed amazed by the simple kindness they were showing her. When they passed the ship's small garden, she stopped and stared at the earth plants growing under artificial lights. In the medical bay, Kate worked carefully to treat the alien's injuries. She used hand gestures and simple drawings to explain what she was doing, and the alien cooperated completely. There was trust in her eyes that Jake found both touching and puzzling. Why would someone who had been hurt so badly trust strangers so quickly? "Her arm is set and healing," Kate reported after an hour of work. "The cuts are cleaned and bandaged. She'll be fine with rest and proper food." Tony had been working on translation programs trying to understand the alien's language. "I think her name is something like Zarathus," he said. "And Jake, I think she's trying to thank us over and over again. It's like she can't believe we're helping her." Jake sat down next to Zarathus and spoke slowly. "Welcome to our ship. You're safe now." She looked at him with those large eyes and spoke in her musical voice. Tony's translation program was starting to pick up basic words. "She's saying thank you," Tony reported. "And something about kindness? I think she's surprised that we're being kind to her." Jake felt his heart break a little. What kind of people had hurt this gentle being and cast her out to die? And why was simple human kindness such a surprise to her? As the New Horizon turned toward Earth carrying their first alien visitor, Jake wondered what they would learn from each other. One thing was certain: humanity was about to show the galaxy what it truly meant to welcome a stranger. The White House meeting room buzzed with nervous energy as President Maria Lopez reviewed the reports from the New Horizon. Around the table sat the world's top scientists, military leaders, and diplomats. Everyone knew they were about to make history. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Lopez began, "we have our first contact with an intelligent alien species. Her name is Zarathus, and according to our translation programs, she was exiled from her people for suggesting they should make peaceful contact with other species." She paused to let that sink in. In other words, she was punished for believing what we're about to do right now. Dr. Peter Hayes, the head of the Xenobiology Department, leaned forward. "Madam President, from what we've learned so far, her people, the Velthari, are an ancient empire that believes other species are inferior. They conquer or destroy civilizations they consider beneath them." General Ray Cooper frowned. "And now one of them knows everything about Earth's defenses and technology. Are we sure bringing her here was wise?" President Lopez looked at the general calmly. "Ray, this woman was beaten and left to die in space because she believed in peace. Does that sound like someone who would betray us?" Dr. Kate Sullivan, who had been treating Zarathus since the rescue, spoke up. "Madam President, I've spent 3 days with her. She's gentle, curious, and genuinely grateful for our help. She's also terrified that her people might find her here and hurt us for helping her." "What exactly is she afraid of?" asked Secretary of State Linda Brown. Kate consulted her notes. "According to Zarathus, if the Velthari discover that we helped her, they'll either try to enslave us or destroy us completely. She's begged us several times to let her leave Earth to protect us. President Lopez stood and walked to the window overlooking the rose garden. And what did you tell her? Kate smiled. I told her that we don't abandon people who need help, even if it might be dangerous for us. She cried when I said that. I don't think anyone has ever protected her before. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Earth was about to welcome a refugee from a powerful alien empire that might see their kindness as an act of war. I've made my decision, President Lopez announced. We're going to offer Zarathis full sanctuary on Earth. We'll help her build a new life here and we'll learn from each other. If her people come looking for trouble, we'll face that when it happens. 2 days later, Zarathis stood in the lobby of the Riverside Community Center, surrounded by curious but friendly humans. The small town of Riverside had been chosen as her new home because of its reputation for welcoming newcomers and its distance from major population centers. Bill Johnson, a retired teacher, stepped forward with his wife Carol. Zarathis? I'm Bill and this is Carol. We'd like to invite you to stay with our family while you get settled. Zarathis looked confused. Through her translation device, she asked, Why would you open your home to a stranger? What do you gain from this? Carol smiled warmly. Honey, that's what neighbors do. Besides, our kids are dying to meet you. Alex is studying astronomy, and Sophie wants to be a linguist. They're both thrilled to have a real alien to talk to. The word alien should have stung, but somehow it didn't when Carol said it. There was no hatred or fear in her voice, just acceptance and excitement. The Johnson house was unlike anything Zarathis had ever seen. It was warm and filled with personal items that told the story of the family's life together. Photographs covered the walls showing happy moments and celebrations. Comfortable furniture invited people to sit and relax. The kitchen smelled of fresh bread and coffee. This is your room, said Alex, a 16-year-old boy with bright eyes and an eager smile. Mom and Dad said you could decorate it however you want. Do you want to see my telescope? I've been trying to figure out which star your planet orbits. Sophie, his 14-year-old sister, bounced excitedly. Can you teach me some words in your language? I've been studying the recordings from your rescue, and the sound patterns are fascinating. Zarathis felt overwhelmed by their enthusiasm. You are not afraid of me? Why would we be afraid? Sophie asked, genuinely puzzled. You seem really nice and you've got such cool technology. Did you really travel between stars? That evening, the Johnsons invited neighbors over for a barbecue to meet their new guest. Zarathis had expected suspicion or hostility, but instead found curiosity and warmth. Children asked her about space travel. Adults wanted to know about her planet's culture. Elderly residents shared stories of their own families coming to America from distant lands. Every family in this town came from somewhere else originally, explained Mrs. Henderson, a retired librarian. My grandparents came from Ireland during the potato famine. The Garcia's family fled from war in Central America. The Patels moved here from India for better opportunities. You're just the latest in a long line of people looking for a new home. Dr. Nina Scott, a physicist from the nearby university, became a regular visitor. She and Zarathis worked together in Bill's garage, which had been converted into a makeshift laboratory. They combined human and Velthari knowledge to solve problems neither could handle alone. Look at this, Nina said excitedly one morning, showing Zarathis a new energy cell they had designed together. Your understanding of crystal matrices combined with our manufacturing techniques. We've created something entirely new. Professor Ben Clark joined them, bringing students who were eager to learn. The garage became an informal classroom where humans and their alien friend exchanged knowledge freely. Zarathis was amazed by how differently humans approached learning. In the Velthari Empire, knowledge belongs to the ruling class, she explained to the group. Students are taught to memorize and obey, never to question or experiment. But you encourage questions. You celebrate when someone proves an old idea wrong. Ben laughed. That's how we learn and grow. Every question makes us smarter, even if we can't answer it right away. As weeks turned into months, Zarathis found herself changing. The constant fear that had marked her life in the Empire began to fade. She laughed more often, especially when the Johnson children taught her human games or showed her movies. She learned to cook human food and discovered she loved pizza and ice cream. The wider human community embraced her as well. Schools invited her to speak about space and alien cultures. Scientists collaborated with her on research projects. Artists worked with her to create new forms of expression that combined human and Velthari techniques. "I don't understand," she told Carol one evening as they worked together in the garden. "Why does everyone accept me so easily? In the Empire, anything different is seen as dangerous or inferior." Carol smiled as she planted tomatoes. "Maybe that's why you're here and they're not. We've learned that different doesn't mean bad. It usually means interesting." The most surprising discovery was how much humans valued her opinion. In the Empire, her ideas had been considered dangerous heresy. On Earth, those same ideas about cooperation and peace were seen as valuable wisdom. During a video call with world leaders, Zarathis was asked about the possibility of peaceful contact with other alien species. "The galaxy is full of civilizations," she told them. "Most are afraid of each other because of empires like the Velthari. But if Earth showed them a different way, a way based on friendship instead of conquest, many would listen." President Lopez leaned forward on the screen. "You really think we could build a peaceful alliance of worlds?" "Humans have something most species don't," Zarathis replied. "You have hope. You believe people can change and grow. That hope is more powerful than any weapon the Empire possesses." As her first year on Earth ended, Zarathis stood in the Johnsons' backyard watching the stars. Alex joined her with his telescope and they searched the sky together. "Do you miss your home?" he asked quietly. Zarathis considered the question carefully. "I miss the beauty of my planet and the friends I lost. But I was never really home there. Here with your family and this community, I feel like I belong for the first time in my life." She didn't know that far across the galaxy, the Velthari Empire had begun searching for their lost exile. She didn't know that their ancient sensors had finally detected the unique signature of her rescue beacon. Most importantly, she didn't know that Admiral Kethmoran, her former mentor, was leading a fleet toward Earth with orders to retrieve her and punish any species that had dared to help her. For now, she was simply happy to be home among people who had shown her that the galaxy could be a place of kindness rather than conquest. The emergency alarm echoed through Earth's orbital defense station as Admiral Ray Cooper stared at the massive shapes appearing on his screens. 12 Velthari dreadnoughts had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. "Sir, they're sending a message," reported Lieutenant Amy Brooks from the communications station. "Put it through," Ray ordered, though his stomach was already twisting with dread. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a tall Velthari figure in elaborate military dress. His pale blue skin bore the ritual scars of high rank, and his eyes held the cold arrogance of someone accustomed to absolute power. "Primitive species of the third planet," the alien spoke, his words automatically translated by the computers Zarathis had helped them build. "I am Fleet Admiral Kethmoran of the Velthari Empire. You are harboring a criminal exile named Zarathis. Surrender her immediately. And we may consider allowing your species to serve the Empire as slaves rather than destroying you completely." Ray felt anger surge through him, but forced himself to remain calm. "This is Admiral Ray Cooper of Earth Defense Command. Zarathis is under our protection as a refugee seeking asylum. We will not surrender anyone to be harmed." Kethmoran's expression showed surprise, then amusement. "You would defy the Velthari Empire to protect a worthless exile? Your species is even more primitive than our scouts reported. You have 1 Earth hour to reconsider, or we will take her by force and reduce your cities to ash." The transmission ended, leaving the defense station in tense silence. Ray looked around at his officers, seeing fear mixed with determination on every face. "Sir," said Captain Ellen Brooks, "our entire fleet combined couldn't stop one of those ships, let alone 12. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." Ray nodded grimly. "Get me President Lopez on a secure channel. And contact Jake Miller. We need Zarathis brought to the capital immediately." 2 hours later, emergency meetings were taking place around the globe. In Washington, President Lopez sat with her cabinet and military advisors, while on screens around the room, world leaders from every continent participated in the most important conference in human history. "The situation is clear," President Lopez began. "We can't fight them and win. They could destroy our entire civilization without breaking a sweat. But I'll be damned if we're going to hand over Zarathis to be tortured or killed." Prime Minister James Parker of Britain spoke first. "Maria, I understand the moral position, but we're talking about the survival of our entire species. Is one alien worth that risk? Yes, came a quiet voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see Zarathus entering with Jake Miller and Dr. Kate Sullivan. She looked pale but determined. But I will not let humanity die for my sake. I will surrender myself to Admiral Kethmoran. President Lopez stood up. Absolutely not. We don't abandon people who need help, no matter the cost. But your people, Zarathus began. Our people made a choice when we welcomed you, interrupted Secretary of Defense Mike Torres. We knew this day might come, and were prepared to face the consequences. Zarathus looked around the room with tears in her large eyes. I have lived among you for 2 years. I have seen your kindness, your courage, your hope. I will not let the Empire destroy such beauty. President Lopez put a gentle hand on Zarathus's shoulder. And we won't let them destroy you. There has to be another way. Dr. Peter Hayes, who had been studying Velthari culture through Zarathus's teachings, spoke up. What if we don't fight them? What if we invite them to learn about us instead? Everyone stared at him as if he had gone insane. Peter, said President Lopez carefully, they just threatened to reduce our cities to ash. But they don't understand us yet, Peter continued. Zarathus was exiled for suggesting peaceful contact with other species. What if we show them what that looks like? What if we demonstrate the value of cooperation over conquest? General Lisa Thompson, head of the Joint Chiefs, frowned. You want to invite a hostile alien fleet to tea? Why not? Asked Dr. Kate Sullivan. It worked with Zarathus. She came here expecting nothing and found a home. Maybe her people just need to see what they're missing. Zarathus shook her head sadly. You do not understand the Empire. They see kindness as weakness. They will interpret your generosity as surrender. Then we'll have to change their minds, President Lopez said firmly. Kate, how quickly can you put together a cultural presentation? Music, art, stories that show what humanity is really about. Give me 6 hours, Kate replied. Admiral Ray Cooper looked skeptical. Madam President, this is incredibly risky. If we're wrong about their reaction, we won't get a second chance. Ray, if we surrender Zarathus, we prove that our values mean nothing when tested. If we fight them, we all die anyway. This might be our only real option. The next few hours were a frenzy of preparation. Musicians, artists, scientists, and historians worked together to create a presentation that would show the Velthari fleet what humanity truly represented. Dr. Alex Foster compiled medical breakthroughs that had come from combining human and Velthari knowledge. Danny Rodriguez gathered musical pieces that demonstrated human creativity and emotion. Zarathus worked with them, explaining Velthari psychology and helping them understand how her people might react to different approaches. Remember, she warned, they have been taught that strength comes from dominance. You must show them that your greatest strength comes from cooperation. As the deadline approached, President Lopez led a small diplomatic team aboard the New Horizon. Jake Miller would pilot the ship toward the Velthari fleet, while Dr. Kate Sullivan and others would present humanity's case for peaceful coexistence. This is either the bravest thing we've ever done, or the most foolish, Jake muttered as they approached the massive alien vessels. Maybe both, replied President Lopez. Zarathus, are you ready for this? Zarathus nodded, though her hands shook slightly. Admiral Kethmoran was my mentor in the Imperial Academy. He taught me about honor and duty, but he also showed me kindness when I was young. If anyone in the fleet might listen, it would be him. The communication channel opened, and once again Admiral Kethmoran's image appeared before them. This time his expression showed surprise and confusion. Zarathus, he said, his voice softer than before. I had hoped the reports were wrong. How could you ally yourself with these primitives? They are not primitives, Zarathus replied firmly. They are the most advanced civilization I have ever encountered. Not in technology, but in wisdom. They know secrets the Empire has forgotten. Kethmoran's eyes narrowed. What secrets could these creatures possibly possess? President Lopez stepped forward. Admiral, we would like to invite you and your officers to visit Earth, not as conquerors, but as guests. Let us show you what we've learned about turning enemies into friends. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Finally, Kethmoran spoke. You offer us hospitality while we threaten you with destruction? Yes, President Lopez replied simply. That's what friends do. For the first time in the conversation, Admiral Kethmoran looked uncertain. In the background, other Velthari officers could be seen talking among themselves with obvious confusion. This is not how conquests proceed, Kethmoran said finally. You should be begging for mercy or preparing for battle. Dr. Kate Sullivan smiled. Admiral, we'd rather prepare for dinner. Earth's cuisine has improved considerably since Zarathis taught us about Velthari dietary needs. Young Officer Temshari appeared behind Kethmoran and whispered something urgent in his ear. The Admiral's expression grew even more puzzled. My science officer reports that your planet is broadcasting what appears to be music and mathematical proofs, and something called recipes for friendship bread. What is the purpose of these transmissions? We're introducing ourselves, explained President Lopez. The same way you might introduce yourself to a new neighbor. Would you like to hear some of it? As Earth's cultural presentation began broadcasting to the Velthari fleet, something unprecedented happened. Some of the alien officers began to question whether destruction was really necessary. Others argued for following their original orders. The unity of the Imperial fleet started to crack under the weight of human kindness. Admiral Kethmoran found himself facing the most difficult decision of his military career, while his former student watched with hope and terror in equal measure. Admiral Kethmoran stood on the surface of Earth for the first time, breathing air that felt strangely warm and alive compared to the recycled atmosphere of his warships. Around him, his carefully chosen escort of officers looked equally uncomfortable as they followed their human guides through the streets of Washington, D.C. This is our memorial to those who died in our last global war, explained Commander Lisa Thompson, gesturing to the black granite wall inscribed with thousands of names. We built it not to celebrate war, but to remember the cost of hatred. Officer Temshari, the youngest member of the Velthari group, approached the wall and touched one of the names. These humans died fighting each other? Yes, Lisa replied sadly. We learned too late that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. We promised ourselves never to forget that lesson. Kethmoran watched his young officer's reaction with growing unease. The Velthari Empire was built on the idea that conflict was natural and necessary. Yet these humans spoke of overcoming their violent nature as if it were a good thing. Their next stop was the Smithsonian Museum, where Dr. Alex Foster waited with displays showing human history. The exhibits told a story of gradual progress from tribal warfare to global cooperation. This section shows our darkest moments, Dr. Foster explained, indicating displays about slavery, genocide, and oppression. We don't hide our past mistakes. We study them to avoid repeating them. Why do you show us your weaknesses? Asked Commander Velnara, Kethmoran's second-in-command. Does this not make you appear inferior? Dr. Foster smiled. Actually, it makes us stronger. When you admit your mistakes, you can learn from them and grow. Pretending to be perfect just means you never improve. The concept seemed to disturb several of the Velthari officers. Their empire was based on the idea of Velthari superiority and perfection. The suggestion that acknowledging flaws could be a strength was deeply unsettling. At George Washington University, they met with international students from dozens of countries. The Velthari officers were amazed to see humans from different continents, with different skin colors and cultures, working together on research projects. On our world, different regions have been at war for centuries, explained student Maria Santos from Brazil. When I came here, I was afraid of people who looked different from me. Now my best friend is from Nigeria, and my research partner is from Japan. We've learned that our differences give us new ways to solve problems. Temshari approached Kethmoran privately. Admiral, these humans seem to have solved problems that we consider impossible. How do they maintain unity with so much diversity? Kethmoran had no answer. In the Velthari Empire, unity came through force and the suppression of differences. Yet humans seem to achieve even greater unity by celebrating their differences. The turning point came when they visited a small farm outside the city. Joe Wilson, an elderly man with weathered hands and kind eyes, welcomed them to his property. His story was simple but powerful. I lost both my sons in Earth's last big war, Joe told them as they sat on his porch watching the sunset. For years I hated the people who killed them. That hate was eating me alive from the inside. How did you overcome such hatred? Kethmoran asked, genuinely curious. Joe poured them glasses of fresh lemonade. I realized that holding on to hate was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So I chose to forgive, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. But surely you still desire revenge, pressed Commander Velnara. What would revenge give me? Joe asked. Would it bring my boys back? Would it make the world safer for other people's children? I decided to spend my energy on building something better, instead of destroying something that was already broken. The simplicity of his words hit the Velthari officers like a physical blow. In their empire, revenge and dominance were considered virtues. The idea of choosing forgiveness over retribution was almost incomprehensible. That evening, as the Velthari delegation prepared to return to their ships, disagreement broke out among the officers. Some argued that human weakness made them perfect slaves for the Empire. Others questioned whether what they had seen was actually weakness at all. These humans have achieved what we consider impossible, argued Temshari. They have created a society where former enemies work together willingly. Perhaps our methods are not the only way to build civilization. Commander Velnara disagreed strongly. They are soft and naive. Once we conquer them, they will learn the value of proper discipline under imperial rule. The argument grew heated, with officers taking sides. For the first time in Velthari military history, a fleet was divided not by tactical disagreements, but by fundamental questions about right and wrong. Admiral Cathmaran found himself thinking about his former student, Zarathis. She had tried to tell him these same things years ago, but he had been too proud and set in his ways to listen. Now he saw the truth of her words reflected in everything he had witnessed on Earth. The crisis came when hardline officers, led by Commander Velnara, attempted to seize control of the fleet and attack Earth despite Cathmaran's orders to withdraw. The admiral found himself in the unprecedented position of fighting his own officers to protect an alien world. You have been corrupted by these primitives, Velnara declared as her ships moved to attack positions.
I will not let their weakness infect the Empire. The battle was brief but decisive.
Ships that had served together for decades now fired on each other in Earth's solar system, but the outcome was determined not by superior firepower, but by the fact that most of the Velthari officers had been changed by what they had seen on Earth. When the fighting ended, half the fleet remained loyal to Cathmaran and his new understanding, while the other half limped away toward Empire space to report what they called the Admirals. Betrayal. Cathmaran's remaining ships took up protective positions around Earth as he addressed both his own people and the humans, watching from below. People of Earth, he said. His words broadcast across the planet. I came here to retrieve a criminal and punish those who helped her. Instead, I have found something far more valuable than conquest. You have shown us that strength comes not from dominating others, but from lifting them up. You have taught us that diversity creates resilience, not weakness. He paused, looking directly at the camera. Today, the Velthari Empire has an enemy. Not you, but our own ignorance and hatred. I formally request asylum for myself and my officers. We wish to learn from you as Zarathis has learned. The response from Earth was immediate and overwhelming. Messages of welcome poured in from around the globe. President Lopez addressed the world, announcing that Earth would gladly provide sanctuary for any being seeking to escape oppression and learn about peaceful coexistence. 5 years later, Zarathis stood in the assembly hall of New Geneva, Earth's first interspecies city. Around her sat representatives from 6 different alien civilizations, all refugees from various galactic empires who had found their way to the small blue planet that had become known across the galaxy as a sanctuary for those seeking peace. Admiral Cathmaran, now simply called Keth by his human friends, worked alongside Dr. Peter Hayes to establish colonies where different species could live and learn together. The former military commander had discovered a talent for diplomacy and education. The Velthari Empire is in chaos, reported Captain Ellen Brooks, now head of Earth's interstellar communication network. The civil war between traditionalists and reformers has spread to dozens of worlds. Many planets are declaring independence and asking for Earth's guidance in building peaceful societies. Zarathis smiled as she watched human children playing with young aliens in the plaza outside. Their laughter was the same regardless of what planet their parents came from. The revolution we dreamed of is finally happening, but it started not with weapons or conquest, but with simple kindness. Dr. Kate Sullivan, now director of the Interspecies Cultural Exchange Program, joined them at the window. Jake Miller sends his regards from the Andromeda mission. They've made contact with 3 new civilizations, and all of them have agreed to peaceful first contact protocols. The memorial at the center of the plaza bore words in 12 different languages, but they all said the same thing. Cast out by fear, welcomed by hope, united by choice. As Zarathis prepared for another diplomatic mission to help establish the Galactic Council of Free Worlds, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from exile to ambassador. The Velthari Empire still existed, but it was no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. That honor now belonged to a small blue planet, whose people had learned that the universe was big enough for everyone. The revolution had begun not with grand gestures or mighty weapons, but with a single act of rescue in the darkness of space. It had grown through countless small kindnesses, shared meals, and the radical idea that differences should be celebrated rather than feared. Earth had kept its promise to Zarathis. She had found not just sanctuary but a home among the stars. In return, she had helped humanity show the galaxy that there was another way to live among the infinite diversity of creation. The future belonged not to empires built on fear and conquest, but to communities built on hope and understanding.